Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. My name is Steve, otherwise known as Pin, and today I would like to talk to you about ground vehicles and why I think they're going to play a very important role in the future of the verse as the verse expands and becomes ever more immersive and diverse in what we can do. I really do feel like ground vehicles are going to be key, especially to some organisations. Now, we will start things off with the mighty Anvil Ballista, and then we will talk about the Nova tank, and we'll of course cover these vehicles in as much detail as possible. But collectively, I think ground vehicles as a whole tend to get a little bit overlooked, because as it stands in game at the moment, there isn't too much we can really do with them. Now, we did get a glimmer of what we can expect to achieve from using ground vehicles with Jumptown. Jumptown 2.0 was the last time I used a Ballista and or Nova tank, with some success, I might add. I know that some other organisations were using them, so they did sort of prove their worth during that excellent event that I thoroughly enjoy every time Jumptown's on. So there is a lot of potential here. I will try to go over what my theories and thoughts are on how these are going to play out in the future. But we will start with the Anvil Ballista. We'll talk about some of its specs, how I would employ it, and all the good stuff that it comes with, because it is an evil machine, of course. And then we will move on to the Nova tank and then discuss that in some detail. And then I will try and summarise of where I think ground vehicles should be, why we need more, and just the general longevity of these ground vehicles, as I said, because I do feel that they kind of get overlooked. Okay, so let's now begin discussing the Anvil Ballista. Okay, so the mighty Anvil Ballista, it is an absolute machine. Anti-air, the potential for anti-infantry, is almost certainly anti-social. I really do like the look of this thing. It is extremely mean. It carries 8 size 5 missiles, and alongside those you also get 2 size 7 torpedoes. So quite a substantial amount of firepower in the missile department. Also equipped with 2 size 2 Gatling guns, which will come in extremely useful for, you could use it anti-infantry, or if you've run out of missiles you have a chance. I wouldn't say it's going to be the most effective way, but at least you can defend yourself a little bit against ships. But I do feel that the Ballista is going to be the cornerstone of security for you and your colony in the future. So let's imagine we're out in the middle of nowhere and we've found a plot of land, we've claimed it, we're setting up shop, okay? This is where we're going to live, we need protection, let's deploy our ballistas. So why would you want to deploy your ballistas? Well, I've been thinking about it, and let's say that you've got several fighter ships and maybe even a Kraken or something of that nature, but most of us are not going to have a Kraken. They're very hard to get. So let's pretend that you found a plot of land and you're a small organisation, but you haven't got a Starfarer. Fuel is going to be an issue for you because you don't know where the resources are. You're going to have to scan the entirety of the particular planet or moon that you're on to find these resources, to mine, to convert to fuel. A Starfarer, although will be useful, you still have to get it there, and then you have to, once the tanks are drained for your combat air patrol of various ships, then what do? The Ballista, I think, will make excellent quick protection for you and your colony in the future with that firepower. I really do think that the Ballistas really will come into their own as an initial security point for your deployment of your colony. It will be cheaper, more cost effective, easy to use, and they're fairly cheap. So, this can be operated by one crew member comfortably, even if you had 2 of your crew or members of your organisation on a rotation just to sit in the turret while the Pioneer does its thing. Or you have an expedition force out, you're going to want to leave someone behind to protect your newly established territory, right? And I really do think that the Ballista will be key in that sort of role. Now, transportation might be a problem at the moment. We can only get it into the Hercules variants of ships, except you can get one in the A2, but the A2 has, obviously, the Moabs taken up quite a lot of room. So I just think there's a lot of potential here for the ballistas. Anti-ship, again, with the remote turret for the driver, you could easily do raids into enemy territory, start gunning down infantry, it'd make a great assault vehicle. If there's enemy ships trying to scramble from their landing pads on an enemy colony or something like that, you've got the ability to immediately shoot it down. So I do think there's a huge amount of potential for the ballista, and they're cheap. So you could have multiple ballistas. You know, I think in M2 you could squeeze 3 in, and bam, straight away we have point defense on the ground. So what we'll do now is, of course, we will have a detailed look of the ground vehicle itself. As you can see, 8 wheels, the front 4 do the steering, and we have 1 entry point into the ground vehicle. That is the ballista. Okay, let's jump in to the ballista then and have a poke around and see what we get. So as we enter the ground vehicle, on the left we have weapon racks, which is going to be useful for a vehicle of this nature. On the right we have, I think, components, possibly, some panels there, and then of course right towards the front we have the driver's seat, which you can operate the Gatling guns from, which will come in useful for your raids or defense against enemy infantry or pirates or whatever it might be. Having access to them is pretty nice. It is a very tight cockpit, I would say. However, I do like the way that the sort of MFDs wrap around the driver, so he can have everything at his fingertips, which is a very nice touch. Various buttons and switches, all in the classic detail that CIG provide. In terms of visibility, it's fine. You know, for a vehicle of this size, it's absolutely fine. You won't struggle with it all that much. Towards the rear, we have the missile operator station to operate those weapon systems, the all-important missiles and torpedoes. Comes in with like a built-in radar and scanning suite, if you will. Probably a very important place to be on this ship. Especially if we've just landed and we are colony building, I would want someone in here, vehicle parked, doesn't have to be moving, just sat protecting everyone else while they're working. So I do think there is huge potential here for the ballistas as a whole in the future. We will see how effective they are. We know that the ground signature of vehicles is being tweaked to make them less prominent, a bit harder to detect, which I think is fair because ships are much bigger. So we'll see how that sort of balancing takes place, but I do feel that that seat right there is a very important one. So we do have pull catch to release, more component slots, nice flashing buttons, which we really do like. So it'd be interesting to see when we get access to these what exactly they're for. I imagine they're components or blade implementation possibly. And we have this panel next to the weapon rack that says danger, do not pull handle. I have been trying to figure out what that is for. Nobody seems to know, so I'm going to have an educated guess, and I'm going to say I think that's a weapon jettison handle. That would be my theory on that particular handle. I think it would, for whatever reason, if we start taking damage, we don't want those massive torpedoes or missiles to explode at the back. I think you pull that handle, and possibly you would jettison all of your armament on the back of the vehicle. That would make sense, I think. Whether or not that's what it's for, I couldn't tell you, but that is my sort of educated guess as to what that handle is. I can't wait to pull it in the future and see what happens. I guess we'll have to wait and see. So the Anvil Ballista then, it is an absolute machine and requires a bit more love, I think. I think the potential for it is huge. So what we'll do now is, of course, we'll move on to our walk around. So as you can see, it's a big old vehicle, nice lights. You'll notice by the front wheels there are supports, struts that go into the ground, so it will raise the vehicle off the deck for that stationary defense role, which I think is a nice touch. I don't know if they work. I couldn't find anywhere in the cockpit to deploy them. But that might have been, I might have just overlooked that. So if you know, then please let me know in the comments if they are operational, because I think I missed it if they are. But otherwise, very girthy, very wide vehicle. Okay, does look very cool. And of course, the whole point of this ballista is, of course, that massive weapon system strapped to the back with the scanning suite, radar, and of course the formidable weaponry. Does seem to have nice dirt tyres on for all-terrain purposes, which is obviously going to come in very useful. But yeah, it is very cool, and I do think that ground vehicles as a whole don't get the attention they deserve. Now, I scored a few kills with this in Jumptown 2.0, so that was a while ago. Those size 5 missiles are devastating, absolutely devastating, and of course the torpedoes are just as devastating themselves. Kind of puts out nearly the same amount of firepower, if not more, of the Gladiator. I think it's roughly, they're very similar in their damage output. We have a high nose cockpit area with tinted yellow glass, which is a nice touch because we don't want sun in our eyes constantly. So overall, a very impressive machine, I think you'll find. And if you look closely, you can see the infrared, if that is infrared, but there are sort of the homing beacons of the weaponry itself, which is a nice touch. Very cool looking, especially as the sun sets on Microtech here. You can really see the detail. So formidable, this thing, and the potential of it is obviously going to be amazing. So we'll move in, and straight away, this is the weapon operator seat for the missile system and all of that good stuff, where we'll get access to radar, scanning suite. We'll close the door, which isn't too slow, which is nice, so getting in and out really isn't an issue. It is the only way in and out. Here we have some of these, again, panels and things, which I'm not entirely sure. Like I said, if I had to guess, future components, I think. I don't think we get blades in there. Then we have the weapon rack, and do not pull handle, but I want to pull it. You know, let me pull that handle. I'm almost certain that's got to be weapon jettison. What else could it be? Unless it's like the most awkward self-destruct button in the world. Anyway, let's hop in the seat. And we're greeted by a arm with 2 MFDs. We do have access to quite a few things in here. Normal stuff, really. And then we have the turret. Rotation is very good. Obviously, it needs to be. Super quick. So we have 8 Scimitar 5s and 2 Helion Mark 7 size 7 torpedoes. That's a lot of firepower. And if we deploy 3 at one time, your colony is going to be fairly safe. But the rotation is good. It actually has really good depression, this turret as well, which took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting to have that sort of really good depression, being able to point so low. So that's going to allow us to track flying ships that are dipping in and out of cover nicely, except from the front, obviously, where that remote turret is. But everywhere else, I think, is that's surprising how much depression we can get from that ship. Turret, sorry. Then we'll move forward, of course, hop in the driver's seat. Do a nice 180, face the front. And again, I like this cockpit. Nicely laid out. We have various buttons here. Open exterior, press to unlock. You can access our shields, power off, all the good stuff. Capacitor triangle. We have the radar right in front of the driver, which makes sense as we're sort of anti-air. So it's a nicely laid out, well detailed cockpit. I like it. Again, the visibility isn't terrible. As you can see, we can get a fairly decent view. Let's hop into the remote turret. And here we have the size 2 Gatlings, currently equipped with the Scorpions. I do think that these will be useful. We could take, if you don't have Spartans, I wouldn't bring, maybe I'd bring 1 Spartan for troop transport, but I would more than likely have a Prowler or a Valkyrie to drop troops if needs be, rather than the Spartan, depending on the fuel that we have available. But I could certainly use this ballista to go raiding and put these size 2 Gatlins to work. As I said, if they react with ships, then we've got a ballista on point with its weapon systems to combat that. So these will quite easily chew down any infantry. I see no reason whatsoever. Turret rotation is good, visibility is good. You can control this while driving as well and fire them like the Ursa Rover. So that is a nice little touch. And yeah, overall, excellent vehicle. Will certainly come into its own in the future. We'll see how it pans out with the tweaks and the balancing come into the game. And will we get other variants of this? Possibly, hopefully. I do feel like we need some more ground vehicles in the game to spice things up a little bit. Because we've got plenty of ships. We've got plenty of ships that do many, many roles and many things. We are a little bit lackluster in the ground vehicle department. So let's now move on to the mighty Tumbril Nova tank. So here is the mighty Nova tank, equipped with quite a lot of weaponry. So we have, of course, the prominent ballistic size 5 cannon. We have 2 auxiliary size 2 laser repeaters, and 24 size 2 missiles can be deployed as an anti-ship deterrent. So it is almost certainly packing quite a punch. However, there are a few issues with this tank for me personally. One, as it's the only tank in the game, you're going to be fighting Novas and Novas alone, so I'm hoping we get some more variants of tanks. And being a tank review channel in the past, I think that the design of this, although looks very good, when armor does get modeled into the game, because at the moment it isn't, it has sloped armor, okay, which is great because sloped armor does deflect rounds. It's very good. However, the way this tank is built, those incoming rounds from, let's say, an enemy Nova tank, that ballistic round is going to bounce straight off the front of the tank and smash straight into the turret. So it's a little bit risky in terms of how defensive this Nova tank will be, how effective its armor will be. We will see, but I would like to see some more variants of tanks in game. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, but let's have maybe 1, 2 or 3 more tanks into the game just to spice things up a little. So as you can see, we have the weaponry on the top. We have the 24 missiles, which size 2, better to have them than not. You might not always have a ballista. You might have room for maybe 1 ballista and 1 Nova in 1 Hercules, for example. So it's nice to have it. And then of course we do have an anti-infantry and anti-ship capability with the laser repeaters on top of the turret. So it is a fantastic machine. We will need to see how it pans out in terms of armor. Handling for me needs tweaking. It's very skittish across country. It drifts all the time. All the time, it slides all over the place. I want this tank to be sort of, it needs to feel heavy. It doesn't feel heavy. It sort of slides all over the place. So there are some issues from my point of view that I think the Nova tank suffers from. As you can see, it is in fact taller than the ballista. Again, making transportation an issue. But that cannon almost certainly puts out a ridiculous amount of DPS. I've one-shot Valkyries with this thing in Jump Town 2.0 was the last time I used it. We deployed it in the C2, drove that out and murdered quite a few ships on the ground, one-shotting them with ease. So there's a lot of fun to be had with this. So where and why might we use this? Well, again, this goes back down to some of my brilliant theory crafting. So I was just thinking, well, how and why do we have these ground vehicles and why are we going to use them? So we've discussed briefly my thoughts on the ballista. Air defense, defend your colony. But what about when we need to go on the offensive? Then this is when we're going to deploy the Nova tank, right? We're going to deploy the Nova tank. Maybe you found in another system, or maybe even round the corner, you found a colony that you don't want there. You feel that they don't belong to be there. How can we attack it? Now we could, of course, take our ships and bomb it. Of course we could. We could take our ships and, but what, just blast blast away with the various ships that we have in the verse at the moment. But what if they have commodities and we want to take those commodities intact, and maybe they have air defenses, like we do on the bunker missions. We have those turrets, those size 5 attritions, I think they are, off the top of my head. Sorry if I get that wrong. There might be attrition 4s or 5s. What if they have air defenses like that? Maybe they have ballistas preventing your ships from attacking. Then we're going to take the Nova tank. We're going to destroy those air defenses. We're going to destroy any enemy infantry, and then take that colony for ourselves. Then the Nova tank is almost certainly going to be a welcome addition to the future gameplay of this game, when it eventually opens up and we start getting into the cool, exciting era of Star Citizen. So the ballistic cannon, as I've said, can be operated obviously in the turret by a dedicated gunner seat. The driver can also access this, but will only be able to shoot what he's able to see, so you won't get the full 360 that the turret will offer. So you can solo it with relative ease, I would say, but ideally we're going to want this fully manned for maximum hitting potential, in my opinion, depending on the size of the area that you want to attack, right? So at the moment, you can only really attack sort of gun emplacements around bunker missions at the moment, which is a hassle to deploy the tank, drive it there or fly it there, get in it. But in the future, the Nova tank really will be a ground asset. It's going to be interesting. I would like to see the Nova tank alongside ballistas, maybe 1 or 2 Spartans. I would love to see an organisation fight an organisation on the ground. Maybe their air defences are just too strong. You don't want to risk any of your ships while you're protecting your colony, because how are you going to retrieve those ships? Right, there's a lot to sort of discuss with ground vehicles, but I do think the Nova tank is the only effective way of assaulting enemy territory as it stands at the moment. Okay guys, now we're inside the Nova tank. We've taken the ramp in and we are greeted by 2 size 0 power plants and shield generators, and then we have a weapon rack, and then going through you can see the driver's seat, and to the right you will see in a moment you will see the gunner's station. Size 0, you're not going to take any punishment whatsoever from a ship. A ship will absolutely melt these with no hassle. I unfortunately have never been able to have a ground vehicle battle, so I can't really share my opinion of how that works. I've never experienced it, but if you guys have, then please let me know how you feel about it, because size 0 really isn't much in way of protection. Here we have the gunner station. Ideally you would want this manned. You can fire the cannon from the driver's seat, but again you're restricted to his view. Also, the elevation of the gun only goes up, I think it's 29, no, it's 30 degrees, which you're not going to be one-shotting ships out of the sky. That's not what the tank's designed for. I'm glad they've restricted it to prevent that from happening. That's not what the tank is for. You'll leave that to the ballista, but that is the gunner station, and I would ideally like that manned, especially if we're going to assault a enemy position. Here at the front, we can see we have the driver's location on the left and like a secondary station on the right. Interestingly, it's kind of like an old-fashioned Formula 1 steering wheel that drives this tank. It does look cool in here. I do like the sort of yellow tints around the MFDs. I think that gives it a really cool look. We have the various buttons and all the cool stuff you would expect to find in a fighting vehicle. In terms of visibility, not brilliant, but much better than modern tanks that we have today. So that is a very nice touch. Pretty roomy. I think getting in and out of the seats is a little bit of a challenge, let's say, for the animation. I have tripped up 1 or 2 times. It's not particularly comfortable to get in and out of the seats of the tank. Towards the rear then we have the one exit. Now I did notice there seems to be an escape hatch in the turret, but I don't know if we'll be able to use them in the future. I would hope so. We do have maintenance access panels on the floor as well, should we need to repair any damage that the vehicle sustains. And of course here, next to the weapon rack, we have some... I'm going to say that is where we might put blades. Complete conjecture on my part, but that's what I would like to see. I mean, it's the only viable place inside the tank I think that we will see the blade implementation. So the Nova tank, it's awesome, but I think we need more ground vehicles like it. When armor gets modeled, it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out. So what we'll do now is of course take our quick walk around of the Nova tank, and I've put it in the C2 and I've realized that the lights are in fact on the wrong setting, so let's make it a little bit brighter here. We'll do the walk around in the C2 because I feel like it's relevant, right? We are going to be transporting these as it stands in at the moment in the verse. We need to transport these via Hercules. Okay, so tracks, obviously another little issue I have with the tracks is they don't leave any trails across the terrain that we're traversing. That needs to happen. It's a small detail, but it annoys me immensely. I don't know why. When you're driving this tank, it doesn't leave any tank tracks, which is just infuriates me beyond belief. I don't know why, it just does. So here we have the ramp access at the back. It does come in this very, very sort of woodland, nifty camouflage scheme, which is nice. We do have sort of access panels on the side of the vehicle here. I think they're going to be useful for maintenance, pull-in tracks, track bashing, as we used to call it. You're going to need access to the tracks, right? So that's why it's dripping in all these access panels. Also doubles up as extra protection from small arms fire and things of that nature. So it is very wide vehicle, very sleek LEDs located above the tracks there. And again, fairly decent sloped armor at the front. And of course the ballistic size 5 here with, I think, the laser rangefinder located underneath. That would be my educated guess there. Makes sense. But again, any incoming round is just going to bounce off that sloped armor, hit the turret, and you're going to get a trap shot, which could cause problems. But we will see how it all pans out. So the Nova tank, very wide, does need tank tracks behind it, as I've established. It is extremely annoying that we don't have them. I would like the handling tweaked as well, because it feels extremely light and it drifts all the time. You're skidding all over the place. I want it to feel planted. At the moment it doesn't. So we come through the back, we have the ramp, we have some panels here. Again, there are the shield generators and power plants and coolers, size 0. Not a lot of protection in terms of the ability of damage that you're going to be able to take. So it is kind of tight in here. Now, you may be able to get away with transporting maybe 2, let's say, soldiers on board at the back, but they're going to be standing and traversing cross country. They're not going to be standing very long. There will be many casualties in the back of this tank before you even get to the front to use this effectively. So here's this panel again, and I would have to think that that is in fact a blade station. I would think. That's, again, conjecture. Here we have the gunner station. Very nicely detailed seat. You can even see the stitching. That's how detailed it is. It's really cool. So we'll hop in here. We're greeted by the sight system for the gunner. Now, again, to operate the turret, you will need to be in this station, and it will give you the 360 view required to get the most out of this vehicle. You can fire it from the driver's seat, but ideally you're going to want someone here. So a minimum of 2, really, to maximise the potential of this. It does have a HOSAS system, which I find interesting. But yeah, as we can see, it's a good view here. I imagine there's a camera allowing us... I can't really turn the turret. I should have thought about this before I got in here, but, you know, just stick with it. It does move quickly. It does move effectively, and like I said, there is limited elevation with a 30-degree, I think it's 30 degrees elevation, which is good, because we don't want this to be one-shotting ships out the sky. As cool as it is, we want things like the Ballista to do that right, and a bit of prior planning and preparation. We have another shield generator power plant. component behind us here, and the cockpit. I actually really like the cockpit, and this is where it gets a little bit clumsy to get in. You sort of have to crouch, which is bizarre. But once we're in, it's comfortable. We have good visibility-ish for a tank. Better than modern tanks, though. No tiny letterbox driver port. Very modern feel in here, with all of the information required to operate this vehicle at our fingertips. Engine on, enter remote turret, so we can. There we go. But again, you're only going to be shooting at things you can see through the drivers. You can't see behind you or anything. So good to have. You can operate the vehicle solo. But again, we do need a dedicated gunner. But very, very cool in here. So ground vehicles then. Huge potential, especially as the game develops. I think we need more variants. Yes, we keep getting ships. You know, the Expanse has just been released and, well, in concept, and there's a lot of ship talk. But when all is said and done, we're going to want somewhere to call home. We're going to need more ground vehicles, right? Even something like a transportation truck or things of that nature. But at the start, when we start building our colonies, I think Nova tanks, ballistas are going to come into their own. I think we need some more variants just to mix things up for when we do get those big organisation battles. We don't want everyone fighting Nova tank versus Nova tank or ballista versus ballista, Spartan versus Spartan. Let's have a little bit more on the table. Just to spice things up because eventually ground wars are going to happen. I want ground wars to happen, and I think it's an aspect of the game which has huge potential. Fun can be had with these ground vehicles, but overall it's a little bit lackluster, and I just thought I would try and shed some light on my thoughts and feelings of ground vehicles. And as you can see here in this seat, we operate the 2 Badgers with an excellent 360 view and fairly good depression to clear those enemy troops trying to put bombs on us. So yeah, great vehicle. Can't wait to use it to its full potential. Like I said, really looking forward to the ground wars. But what do you guys think of ground vehicles at the moment? Do you have any ideas of what you'd like to see in game? So I've just put out some vague thoughts that I had on ground vehicles, and I think they need a bit more attention. I'd certainly like to see some more, as I've said, because what we have at the moment, they are awesome. I just want a bit more variety, like the ships, and I'm sure it will come in the future. But yeah, so that's going to wrap up today's video, guys. I just wanted to discuss the ground vehicles with you, but as I said, please let me know, what do you think about what we have in game now? What would you like to see? What would you change? And yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what buttons to press, and I'll have more Star Citizen content en route to your location very soon. Cheers.